Hey everybody, it's Jesse Lewis here, and I want to welcome you to the parent edition of the Jesse Lewis podcast. We're going to have a lot of fun today. I will warn you, this one's going to be a little bit shorter than my normal thing because I got a baby back there. Brand new baby last week. So this one's going to be a little bit shorter than normal, and that's really why we're doing this podcast of the parent edition. Now, the parent edition's a very important thing. It's really great to get your kids into geek culture. But let's face it, some of the stuff out there is really not suitable for the little ones at all. And in this episode, I'm going to give you at least 10 different age-appropriate shows or toys or comics that you can get your kids into to start them on the geek culture path. Because let's face it, that's where things are going. With the Marvel movies going crazy, with everything going crazy, if you don't know geek culture in 20 years, you're not going to be very smart. So keep in mind the toys have to be playable. We're not going to work with night lights or anything like that. They have to be usable by real kids. Let's face it, untouchable figurines, nobody wants that at 10 years old. So let's talk about real geek culture for little kids. Now, the first thing I have to talk about is DC's fantastic efforts. You know, the stuff that's put out by Marvel right now on television is not suitable for the little ones. But if you look at some of the DC properties, for instance, Supergirl and The Flash, I would say they're suitable for ages 8 through 14 would probably be good, or 8 and up. And while the other DC properties on TV are pretty intense, like for the Gothams and things like that, Gotham or Arrow, The Flash and the Supergirl are really, really, really kid-friendly. They're really kid-friendly. And not only that, they really have the added benefit of not only fighting crime, but if you really watch the episodes, they speak about tolerance through metaphor. They talk about aliens, racism, sexism, even some gay and lesbian issues. It's covered in both shows. And it's really important that our kids understand that because, let's face it, in 20 years, they're going to be the ones voting for Donald Trump or not. Well, Donald Trump's son. So we don't want that happening to us, do we? Now, also in these shows is taking responsibility for one's actions. And if you even look at this season of Flash, the Flashpoint, he really has to take responsibility for his own actions. And it's always good for our daughters to have really good role models as well. And that's hard to find within geek culture in regards to our girls. So Supergirl is a really good role model, and she's not dressing up like a floozy, let's face it. Now, number 3 on the list. Yeah, The Flash and Supergirl were number 1 and 2. Number 3 on the list is for girls. And it can be for boys too, but Friendship to the Max. No, it's Lumberjanes. And this was kind of hidden up for me. It was actually, I bought it a couple of years ago when my daughter first started reading, and she couldn't read it, so she wasn't really into it. But now that she can read it, she is very, very into it. And I want to thank Pat over at 8th Street Comics in Saskatoon, because he was the one that actually got me into it. It's kind of cheesy for us adults, but it's actually really funny. It really is pretty funny. And it has all the points we should be teaching our kids. It really, really does. So inclusion and all that stuff. It's not just for girls, but boys too. My 4-year-old loves reading this graphic novel. That's Lumberjanes number 3. Now, number 4, and this is a big one. It includes a whole bunch of different toys. In fact, it's the only toy on the list, and that is Lego. And it's kind of a given, but it's a great way to get our kids into geek culture while spending time with them and teaching them how to use their minds to be creative, because you don't have to just build what the Lego set is. Now, of course, lots of parents want to build the Lego set as what it is first, because that's what we've been taught to do. But Lego really has inspired millions over the years, millions of kids over the years, myself included, probably you included, and it's the one toy that I'm not going to let my kids be without, because it teaches you how to build things. It teaches you how to play with things without breaking them, and it teaches you to be careful, and it teaches you also to pick up after yourself, because if you don't pick it up, it goes in the garbage, kids. That's how it works. Now, you add a Batman Lego set in there, and you mix it with the Star Wars Lego set, and a Superman Lego set, and all the different sets, and you get a big tub of them, and you have all those sets. And guess what? The universes collide. What can never happen in comics happens right there in your Lego-y goodness, and it's absolutely fantastic to have. Now, the 5th one is basically any comic that features the smartest person in the Marvel Universe. And I'm not talking about Reed Richards. I'm not talking about Tony Stark. I'm talking about Luna Lafayette. That's right, Moon Girl. She's the 9-year-old black girl, and she's officially the smartest person in the Marvel Universe. It was revealed a couple months ago, and with any comic that she's in, and I believe she has her own series, we have diversity and inclusion, because she is black, and she's a little girl, and she's 9 years old. All in a little 9-year-old girl. It's fantastic. And while Marvel has really been out on the diversity train, they're really getting diverse for the last few years. Let's face it, for a long time they weren't perfect. And neither was DC. For instance, in the World War II era, they used to call the Japanese rats and draw them as rats. And that's just not kosher with anybody. Or even back when the black exploitation was going on in the 70s and they tried to cash in with Power Man, that was not a good sight. And even today, if you look at the let's face it, a little tiny bit of Power Man on Netflix, there's a bit of racism in there. And maybe it's just me throwing up red flags, but I enjoyed the series. It got very real. It was very deep. But there are some racist aspects in there, which bothers me. But if you're wanting to get your kid something, make sure you look up Moon Girl, Luna Lafayette, and get any of the comics that she's in. Lately, they've partially mended their ways and really have a much more diverse product in the fact that they're having gay and lesbians. There's a lot more black superheroes. There's Japanese superheroes. There's superheroes all over the place. And in my opinion, by being diverse, it's really going to show in their pocketbooks in the future. And DC is slowly jumping on that train as well. Now, number 6 is the comic book cartoons or the comic cartoons on Netflix. Honestly, there could be 10 of these by themselves. But if you look at Netflix, there's Batman Beyond, there's the Avengers Assemble, there's the Hulk series, there's Ninja Turtles reboot the movies, and the list just goes on and on and on. And Netflix is the one place that you can go to fill all your geek culture needs. So you sit down with your kid and you just let them watch some geek culture shows, some comic book shows, or whatever. And it fills your child hearts with this geek culture, and soon they'll want to talk about these shows with you, and you'll have a friend for life. Let's face it, we want to be friends with our kids. We also want to parent them, but we want to have something in common with them, so when they turn 14, we can still talk to them. And you could start them off slow. For instance, my son's 4, and currently there's Teen Titans Go, which is a horrible show, but it gets them into the characters, Cyborg and all the rest of it. And then you can move them up to Teen Titans, the old series that they canceled, and then went on Teen Titans Go, which made no sense. And then you move on to things like Avengers Assemble and Batman, and it's really all there on Netflix. Of course, it's all watered down to kid level because that's who it's for. But as geeks ourselves, as nerds ourselves, as what we are ourselves, guess what? We can watch those shows, and because we've read the comics for years, we can actually enjoy them with our kids. And if you have Netflix, you have a very, very large library. They're adding more all the time. In fact, they just added a Killing Joke, I think, maybe, or was it Red Hood? Anyway, they add new ones all the time, and it's really, really good to watch those shows and understand what they can actually help our kids with. And let's face it, it's all about the hero's journey. Those shows are literally about the hero's journey, about overcoming obstacles and seeing diversity and all the rest of it. And it's a great way for our kids to get caught up in geek culture. Now, this one isn't necessarily geek culture, but it is something we all did as a kid. And that's what we read. We read the classic. And there's only one classic for kids out there that everybody I know read, and that's Archie Comics. And they've been publishing for about 65 years, and it's wholesome, family-oriented comic books. And really, there's no other company that's managed to have so much success publishing nothing but all ages comics. They even did a superhero one. They have a zombie one. They had one where Archie got married to both Betty and Veronica, and there's a time travel thing. You can find these in your grocery store still, and it's a great way to get your kids reading. It's really, really good, as long as you can have fun with them too. It teaches them a lot, and they've changed so much over the years, and they've always been pretty diverse in their cast of characters. Yes, they were dominated by white people for a long, long time, but they always had the nerd, they always had the jock, they always had Archie, they had the rich kid Reggie and rich kid Veronica and the poor lady Betty, and the principal was a normal person, and Hoot, Snoot, and Jughead, and all of them. They were all great characters, and they all had a little bit of depth. A little bit. I mean, Jughead ate stuff, that's it. And Betty was a sweetheart, and Veronica was a little bit, she was a little bit of a B word. And they were just good comics, and they're still good comics if you get your kids to read them. Now, we're moving on to number 8. That's right, we're on number 8 already, and it's an epic tale. 2 brothers who find themselves lost in a mysterious valley where they meet a young girl and her grandmother who races cows. That's right, I'm talking about Bone. And really, Bone is one of the first and best graphic novels for all ages. And I can't stress that enough. Some people say that it's for 8 and up. Well, I have a 6-year-old and she doesn't mind Bone at all. And the scary stuff at the end doesn't bother her at all either. It's available in a whopping single volume, and it's pretty big actually. And it's black and white. It's published by the author, and then there's also the smaller serialized stuff from Scholastic. And some people say the stuff at the end is scary, but it's really not that bad. I mean, my 6-year-old is pretty smart and up on this stuff. It's not bad at all for a 6-year-old. Some parents, if they coddle their kids, their 6-year-old wouldn't be able to take it, but my 6-year-old is just fine with it. So the next one is number 9, which is Justice League Unlimited, and I'm talking about the comics. And this book, its precursor, the Justice League Adventures, are absolutely excellent, and it features iconic superheroes, which is important because if you're going to be teaching your kids about geek culture, it's important that you have a bit of history there as well. And these are really all about the stories in these comics. I mean, the scripts are interesting, they're well crafted. You and me can read them and still be interested, and it's a ton of fun. But they take a less serious take on the DC heroes and villains. Some of these have been turned into comics or turned into shows on Netflix, in fact. They're not silly, but there's plenty of well-written drama and action as well. They're pretty good. And what I would recommend actually is if you have a kid in your life, a young kid, say 7, 8, 9, 10, give them this as a gift. And even if you have a geek culture fanatic, give them this as a gift and see if they like it. Because, yeah, it is recommended age 8 and up by the publisher, but what I would recommend is that this is for everybody. It's kind of campy, it's kind of silly, like the old Batman shows, but they're actually really good. Now, this one, my daughter doesn't like that much, but my son does. And it's kind of weird because number 10 is Spider-Man Loves Mary Jane. And basically what it is, it's Spider-Man told from the story of Mary Jane's perspective. And it's told from her perspective as his love interest. And it's really more of a teen romance novel than a superhero book. And this one's not for the young kids. It's going to appeal to ages 9, 10, 11, 12, somewhere in there. But girls like it just as well as boys. And it might be a good thing for our sons to read, specifically because it gets into a girl's mindset or what the publishers think a girl's mindset is. And it really allows our boys to understand a little bit more about what goes on through girls' heads, which might be a good thing for all of our children in the future. Now, I said this would be a list of 10, but I lied because there is a few more that I want to recommend. Teen Titans Go, okay? It's based on the popular animated television show, and I'm talking about the comic book here. Teen Titan Go is a group of heroes, and the kids really love these characters. And when they're done watching the show, well, they can also go read the books. And it's enjoyed by ages 8 and up, but really it's appropriate for all ages. And it's just a lot of fun. The number 12 really isn't in the geek culture genre, but it kind of is. It's more of the, I'd say, nerd culture, because the one I'm talking about is Texas Strangers, and it's not exactly the old west that you might be used to. There's native elves, there's Scottish orcs, there's brawls, and they fight with spells and guns and all the rest of it. And it revolves around a brother and sister, Wyatt and Madeira, and basically a mysterious knife which they have to return to its place of origin. And the quest is complicated by Black Bart. It's been a while since I read this one, so it's just coming to my head now. But basically Black Bart and the gang of outlaws. And it's basically a fairly standard Western tale that has everything. Saloons, poker games, bad guys, really bad lawman. But when you mix magic into it, it becomes something else. It raises it to another level. And I do recommend it for your kids because it's mixing Westerns with fantasy. And it's really good. It's definitely a Western. So there's gunplay, but there's also the magic part of it, which is basically becoming fantasy. It's a good book, and you should probably read it. I'd say it's appropriate for ages 8 and up. Once again, that's Texas Strangers. As long as violence isn't a problem for the adults, which, let's face it, kids are going to breed violence anywhere they look. And even if they're watching anything on this list, there's violence in almost everything that I've talked about. And it's a superhero genre. You can't get past that. Texas Strangers is a great book. It really is. So that's it. That's my list. Some of them you knew, some of you didn't, and that's going to end this edition of the podcast. And you're asking yourself, well, why so short? Well, I told you in the beginning. Back there, I have a baby. If you look, there's a swing moving back and forth. Well, my baby is in that swing. And my 2 other kids, they're what inspired this whole episode. Because, honestly, it's good to have this stuff. And depending on your reaction, my whole 12 viewers that I get every week, we're going to see if you enjoyed this. And what I want you to do is comment below the video, if you can, on YouTube or on Comixstravaganza or Graphic Policy. Please feel free to do something down there as well. And if you liked it, I'll make another list next year if I'm still around. It really depends on you. So I'll see you next time on the Jesse Lewis Podcast. Thanks for watching. Hope you have a great day. Make sure you go and read with your kids today. It's really important that you read with your kids, you play with your kids, and that you become their friend. So in the future, you have a friend, somebody that looks after you in your old age when you're crapping your pants. See you next time.